Welcome to the Sixth Wheels Consulting Podcast, dialoguing disability and discussing difference, inclusion, and all abilities in today's world. Now here are your hosts, Matthew Shapiro and Bob Nolly.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. How are you? Is the post-election fog cleared? I guess so. See, now we've stacked these all out of order so nobody knows what's going on. Hi, everyone. This is Dr. Bob Nolly, your co-host with my friend and host, Matthew Shapiro. How are you?
I'm great, Bob. How are you, sir?
Hey, it's good. You know, we're deep. We've done over 20 episodes here now. When we got started, we spent time talking about, you had just gone on a trip abroad. And we took like a couple of episodes to talk about that because, number one, it was an exciting time and you did some really cool things. And people like to hear about everybody else's travels because they'll never get to go. So they want to hear what it's like. But in our perspective here, they wanted to hear it from the disability perspective too. And, you know, was it enjoyable? What challenges did you face and the like? And, you know, we got a lot of good feedback on that. But I think it's time to open up that issue just for a little chat today, because we saw an article in the Disability Scoop about air travelers with disabilities are going to get a Bill of Rights.
Hallelujah. Hallelujah.
I never knew you were a tenor.
Thank you. Thank you.
A Bill of Rights for airline passengers with disabilities and enhanced disability training for TSA officers, oh my goodness, among other things, are on the way. President Trump signed legislation just recently to reauthorize funding for the Federal Aviation Administration, the FAA, for 5 years. And contained within that package is an increase in civil penalties for bodily harm to passengers with disabilities or damage to wheelchairs and mobility aids. Also creates an advisory committee for recommended consumer protection. Boy, you should be right in the middle of that. And the development of an airline passengers with disabilities Bill of Rights. What did you think when you heard about that?
Can you sense my giddiness through the airwaves?
Yeah, if I could, there's some way I could metaphorically wrap this up and give it to you for Christmas, I would have waited. But
you know, when you sent me this article, and as a matter of fact, my mom sent me this article a couple weeks back as well. I almost shed a happy tear because, as we talked about in our inaugural episode of the Six Wheels Consulting Podcast, cheap plug, you know, we talked about the challenges that travel brings for people with disabilities, and the fact that we will finally have a Bill of Rights or a protective document that protects people with disabilities and protects and comes up with appropriate ways to talk about service animals and what exactly is a service animal and who can be a service animal and protections for when wheelchairs are damaged. That just, you know, gets me so excited because honestly, the way the travel system is right now prevents people with disabilities want to travel, right? And so they miss out on incredible travel experiences because they're afraid that something will happen to their mobility device, or they will be mishandled individually, or in the dreaded TSA line, something will get a little hinky, and that will not be allowed with this new Bill of Rights. So it is an exciting day. It is an exciting day for travelers with disabilities, and I, for one, am just jumping up and down for joy.
So, there's a quote here from Carol Tyson. She's the Government Affairs Liaison for the Disability Rights Education Defense Fund. She's pleased about the mandate because it calls for input from the disability community. She said it's incredibly important to have a voice and to have access to people with decision-making capabilities. Now, she has a hand that was amputated and sometimes travels with a prosthetic and a cane. And she said her air travel experiences have not all been bad, but they varied a lot. She recalled once being told she couldn't sit in an exit row, and other times she got singled out in the TSA line, which, you certainly are aware of that, being problematic at best.
That is always quite the adventure, the TSA line.
And for folks that don't know what the nuances of this law, we'll run down them a little bit. Airports are subject to the ADA Act, but air travel is not governed by the ADA. It's covered by the less familiar Air Carrier Access Act.
Yes.
And that the Bill of Rights we're talking about is going to have language be used to spell out the rights of passengers with disabilities, including receiving assistance and what their other rights are. One thing it will do require the TSA to revise its training for screening passengers with disabilities within the next 6 months. I mean, in the legislative world, that's like tomorrow.
Yes. Yes. And as somebody who has been through many of the awkward pat downs, first, let me preface this by saying I'm not opposed to them because I understand that the TSA has a job to do. They want to keep everyone safe, but they are kind of intrusive. But I have never been one of those types to be a burdensome passenger when I'm asked to take part in those, because I do want to guarantee that everyone is safe, and I recognize that they have a job to do. But it is refreshing to hear that they are going to revise these practices to maybe offer a more a less intrusive way of doing things, and or a less, frankly, sometimes humiliating way of doing things.
Sure, absolutely.
And I think they could also tighten down or get better plans in place to of how to, when they're doing TSA and when they're getting equipment on and off the plane and all of those things, of how to handle equipment. Because my biggest challenge, or I have a couple big challenges, but one of the biggest ones is frequently I come back and my wheelchair is damaged because the baggage people, and I'm not going to single out a certain airline because I think most of them struggle with it. It's a systemic problem. My wheelchair comes back damaged. And, fortunately for me, I have a spare wheelchair that I can use. But there are not people who are as lucky as I am and nor do they have a spare piece of equipment that they can use. And I mean, I've seen my chair bounce on the tarmac. I've seen my chair come back with pieces falling off of it. And they were perfectly fine when I sent it under the plane. So this law requires the collection of best practices and the feasibility of collecting the best practices from airports all over the world. So that would be an interesting collection to walk through. But one thing it does want to examine is the feasibility of someday allowing in-cabin wheelchair restraint systems so people can remain in their chairs in flight rather than having to transfer to an airplane seat. Bob, that would absolutely, if that were the case, Bob, I'd rather be traveling every other week.
Yeah, I was going to say that's a whole paradigm shift. It's a game changer.
That is a huge game changing process for me and people like me, because the most uncomfortable thing for me is that once I am down in the plane seat, I don't move for the duration of the flight. So I'm good for 6 to 8 hours. But once I start getting beyond that point, I start getting very, very, very crabby. And if we are able to sit in our own wheelchairs safely and with restraints that could completely change the way air travel is done for people with disabilities.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
And so I am giddier than a kid on Halloween, because I could finally be able to fly in my own wheelchair. It wouldn't be damaged because it would be on the plane. I would be comfortable, and I could just go anywhere in the world. That would be absolutely tremendous.
Yeah, I was just thinking about the difference of you having to fly, 8 or 10 hours if you left from Dulles and had to fly to CDG in Paris, Charles de Gaulle. I mean, that's like 8 hours on a good day.
Well, I did that. I did that when I did my trip, and I did it, but it was great. But we also flew first class with the really nice seats that recline and do all of that. We did that for my comfort because, as I said, I can't sit in just a regular plane seat for 8 to 10 hours.
Who can?
Right, exactly. But see, you can at least get up and move around if need be.
Yeah, well, yeah, to a certain extent, you're absolutely right. Yeah,
to a certain extent, yes.
Do not. Yeah, no way trying playing to equate the two. Absolutely not.
Sure, no, and I knew you weren't, but I just wanted to clarify that. And so, we did it for the trip, but think about how much more freedom people with disabilities can have if they know that their equipment's going to be safe, or that there are protections in place so that if something does happen, they have something that they can fall back on to make sure that the problem gets solved.
Yeah.
So often nowadays, it is often pointing fingers, right? Well, we didn't do that. The other airline did that. Or, that wasn't that way when we got your chair. It looked fine, but it's that way now. So no one, they will repair your wheelchair. And from my Europe trip, I had my new wheelchair for not even 2 months, and damage was already done to it. So I was without my brand new wheelchair at full capacity for a solid 6 months because I had to go through all the processes. I had to get all the parts. I had to put all the parts on.
Sure, yeah.
And so that's my legs, right, Bob? And if I don't have my legs, I can't function on a day-to-day basis. As I stated, I'm very fortunate enough to have other means of getting around, but not everyone is as fortunate as I am. And so to finally have a protection with this amazing new Bill of Rights just has me so excited. And I can't wait till the Bill of Rights are finalized. I think we should do a follow-up episode when this Bill of Rights is finally completed, ratified, and put into place to protect airline travelers with disabilities.
Yeah, and I'm sure you will be leading the charge in there to keep up with the folks that are kind of tracking this from a legislation perspective, like Heather Ainsley, who's Associate ED of the Government Relations for Paralyzed Veterans of America. They've got a lot of good opportunities there to do something good with this. It'll be interesting to see how this works moving forward. Carol Tyson, we also mentioned, who is the liaison for the Disability Rights Education Defense Fund as well. Hey, let me stop right there and give you a chance to pivot here for a moment. Sure. We're now over 20 episodes in, and we talked about already how you're getting ready in the end of the year during the holidays to just pause and take a breath. And then I'm sure you won't be taking a vacation, but you'll still be working. But the travel will be minimized and somewhat. What are your? You had some plans for some other things coming on. Is there any update on the certification for local businesses here in the RVA?
So, first of all, I would call it not a vacation, but a staycation.
Thank you. You're right. Yes.
Is wonderful. we're still working on trying to get businesses to consider using the certification. We're always, we would love to partner with more businesses to help make their place of work more inclusive and accessible. We've got an incredible certification program that we would love to share with other people. And so for those that are listening and you think your business could benefit from an assessment and a certification, please reach out. And I also want to say, Bob, that as we're gearing down towards the end of the year here, I always like to reflect, right? And I'm very honored and appreciative that we've been able to have over 20 amazing episodes of this podcast so far. I hope that our listeners are continuing to enjoy the content. Please continue to follow us. Continue to listen to our episodes. We're going to keep doing this thing as long as Bob and I are ready, willing, and able to do so. If you know of any topics that you'd like covered, or you'd like to be a guest, or there's things that we're not talking about that you want us to talk about, or you want us to do it formatted differently, please let us know. And also please provide us with questions if there's things that you want us to talk about and answer. Because we don't do this show just to hear ourselves talk. We do the show so that we can educate our listeners, whether they be disabled or not, about the challenges and the triumphs and the tribulations and the rewards and the downfalls that the disability community faces. And I'm just so thankful for what we've been able to accomplish so far, and I look forward to 20 more episodes and maybe 20,000 more episodes. Who knows?
Folks, you can hear us on Apple Podcasts, on iTunes. You can hear us on Stitcher, on SoundCloud, on Podbean. Where else have you posted?
They can also hear us on Spotify, and they can also hear us hopefully here really soon, if not already, on my Six Wheels Consulting YouTube channel.
Nice.
We should have, if it's not up already, I'm working with my tech folks to help me get it up. But if it's not up already, it'll be up very soon. We're going to actually put all of the podcast episodes in a YouTube playlist on the Six Wheels Consulting YouTube channel, so you can watch/listen to all of these amazing 20 episodes that we've done, and hopefully 20 more that we're going to do here soon. And from here on out, we want to make this podcast as accessible to all listeners as possible. And if there are things that we can do and suggestions that you would have, please share them with us.
Yeah, please go to the Facebook page and leave us, tell us what you think. Leave us a question, make a suggestion there. But, we need to find a way to help Matthew pay the bills here, and that's your turn to pay the bills. So even though we're available at all of these venues, the 600-pound elephant in the middle of the room is Apple Podcasts on iTunes. So go there, find us, and if you can, find it in your heart, leave us a nice 5-star review, and leave us a comment, and we will give you a shout-out on the show. And I want to recognize all the people that have supported us. So think about that.
Yes.
Thanks very much. So, ladies and gentlemen, there it is. You've been listening to the Six Wheels Consulting Disability Podcast. For Matthew Shapiro, this is your co-host, Bob Nolly. Think inclusion, keep rolling forward. We'll see you next time.
Bye, everybody.